Hi, I'm Dave McKenna with Guide Flies. Welcome to the third fly in Hareline's top 20 fly patterns for the beginning fly tyer. This is the Bead Head Caddis. Let's start with our material list here. So for our hook, Hareline gives us a wet nymph hook in a size 12. Our bead head's going to be a 1/8 inch Cyclops gold bead head. Our thread's a A-dot Vivus thread in black. Our abdomen here is going to be an ice dub caddis green, and the thorax is going to be some hare's mask natural dubbing that we're going to blend together. This is a great fly for introducing working with dubbing. So we're going to work with both synthetic ice dub and natural hare's mask, and they're very different as far as actually working with them and getting them to dub a nice tapered noodle there. So the best way to really get good at it is to practice. So we'll start out with this fly, and hopefully you can tie a whole bunch more and get used to working with different kinds of dubbing. So I've just started my thread here behind the bead head, and I'm just going to start a nice thread base here for my dubbing to lock into as I build that up around the hook. I'm just going to bring that back towards the bend right in front of the barb there. And one thing I want to mention you should do is pinch those barbs down before you go out fishing. So I prefer to use, if you're just getting used to working with synthetic dubbing like we're going to hear, a little bit of wax. I really like Overton's Wonder Wax. And ice dub is a little bit easier to work with if you take a good working pinch out of the bag and really separate it with your fingers, kind of shred it down a little bit finer, and it becomes much easier to uh, build a small tapered dubbing noodle. So I'm just going to take a little bit there, and I like to shred it down and blend it in together, especially if you're going to blend it in with a natural dubbing, which you might get into as you start to customize your flies a little more. But I'm just going to take a little tiny pinch, about an inch worth here between my thumb and index finger, and spin it on, twisting it clockwise around the thread. And you can spin your thread counterclockwise before you do this, so you can twist it and let that thread kind of grip the dubbing. And just want to get enough on there for 5 or 6 wraps, and that's going to help us build a nice natural taper to it. If you take a whole big chunk and twist it onto your thread, you're going to get these big chunky flies that look more like eggs than nymphs. So that's something people usually struggle with when they're learning to tie flies and work with this synthetic dubbing. It can tend to be pretty slippery and want to work itself off the thread. So it's basically shredded up pearl tinsel. And it's a little touch of wax there if you're not using a wax thread. One thing that can really help also is, using a nice wax thread like a Semperfli wax thread or a uni wax thread. And a little tying tip there, less is best. So always use a little less dubbing than you think you're going to need. You can add more as you go, but it can be kind of hard to take it off a fly without having to take the whole fly apart. So take your time, be patient. There's no rush to try and get, a 4-inch dubbing noodle. You really only want to tie with 2 or 3 inches of thread outside of your bobbin anyway to give you better thread control. And just put a wrap over that to help keep it down. Next, we're going to work with our hare's mask here, and this is a really old-fashioned, probably one of the original materials for tying flies with, and we're going to take just a little bit off of that cheek and a little bit off of that mask there towards the ears and blend that together, mixing those longer guard hairs and those shorter, fluffier hairs together to build the base for our thorax. And you really don't need to wax your thread for this step. I did here. But if you're going to touch dub it, that can be very helpful for just allowing those longer guard hairs to stick out. And if you find that your dubbing is not working so easily around the thread, you want to take that and pick it apart let the materials be buggy when you work with natural dubbing. They're going to give the fly a really cool look. So you want to get a nice fine noodle for your base there. Give it a couple turns and pick some of those hairs out, see how you want it to look. I like the longer guard hairs in the front. They're going to move around and create a really nice contrast over that ice dub and give it a really natural pupa, caddis pupa look. And just take your time working that around. You know, as you get better, you'll play around with dubbing loops and splitting the thread to create those nice buggy collars on your nymphs. That's a little bit more advanced. So for now, we're going to work on just our pinch dubbing technique. And I'll just throw a little bit more in there to help those little guard hairs flare out. Pick off the loose stuff. Make sure everything's in there good. And then I'll just put a couple dabs of glue on our thread here before we whip finish. It keeps me from having to try and apply glue around that nice natural fur collar, because that'll kind of mat everything down and just get messy. So this is the best way to really put glue on a whip finish for your smaller bugs. And I'll just trim that nice and flush. And that's it. That's the dubbed case caddis. This is a great beginner fly. Tie a lot of these. Get real familiar with your materials, especially the dubbings. You'll be using those a lot in tying trout flies. So good luck. Really hope you liked the video. Hope this was helpful for you. If you did, please like and subscribe. Thanks a lot.